Fiona Hyslop, good afternoon. Thanks very much for joining me. Now, we're hearing today that Nicola Sturgeon is writing to European foreign ministers today to almost brandish her pro-European credentials compared to the Prime Minister. Is this a plea for help this week after the snub from the European Commission for talks, and the UK government said they wouldn't take part in a joint submission either?
Not at all. In fact, I think it's clear that we need to make sure that European capitals know that the Scottish Government's position is that we are pro-European. We recognise the importance of for economic interests, for social interests, for environmental interests, that we remain and continue as part of the European Union. We intend to do so, and I'm very pleased that the Irish Minister has confirmed in an email to our Deputy First Minister that she too also sees a continuing membership for Scotland, and indeed the negotiations that would take place, as we've already said, would take place between 2014 and a yes vote and 2016 and independence, is a way that she thinks is logical and a way forward, quite distinct from David Cameron, who wants to head out of Europe, or at least threaten to head out of Europe. That's not good for Scotland's economy, and if we want jobs and services protected and employment protection in Scotland, for example, I think there's a clear distinction. The unfortunate position is that those that are anti-independence would prefer to gamble on a Tory future than allow Scotland and the Scottish Government to make these decisions. OK, let's pick up on the Lucinda Crichton point. Where in that email to Nicola Sturgeon did you say that explicitly say that Scotland would not have to apply for membership? It doesn't, whereas she twice said that to the BBC, as we saw in the clip. Well, I think it's unfortunate for the BBC that a minister from another government has stated that the BBC has misconstrued her position, and I think it's very helpful that she has recognised the importance and indeed the welcome that Scotland would have across the European Union. Of course we have to reform Europe. There's a number of things that we have to change. Scotland is leading in many ways in reforming the common fisheries policies, etc. So we're seen as cooperative, sensible. But the idea of allowing or relying on a Conservative government, remember with only one MP in Scotland, what mandate is that? To allow them to continue to decide for Scotland, I don't think is acceptable. I think Europe wants to see collective reform. The idea of unilateral reform as being put forward by David Cameron is not acceptable. OK, well, Lucinda Crichton did actually say to us that Scotland would have to apply for membership, and just for absolute clarity, we've got that full clip here, so let's play that just now, just so you can hear it.
Now, in Scotland, we're dominated by a constitutional debate. I mean, you're the president of the EU presidency at the moment. One of the issues is, you know, would an independent Scotland be welcomed by its EU neighbours? So what's your view on that?
Oh, welcome, I think, by all means. But obviously, you know, there are legal constraints. If Scotland were to become independent, Scotland would have to apply for membership, and that can be a lengthy process, as we see, even with the very advanced and well-integrated countries like Iceland, where I've just come from. Iceland is obviously a member of EFTA, has been deeply involved in single market for many years, but still has a task in terms of transforming its legislation and fitting into the European requirements for membership, and that would be the case, I think, for Scotland as well. It may not take as long, but there would be an application and a negotiation process as there is for any candidate country.
Do you think that would be a fairly smooth process, or do you think it would be a difficult process?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of unprecedented. It hasn't happened before. I don't see why it would be a terribly complex process. But I mean, negotiations for membership are always, they're always painstaking and they're always complex. But I don't see why it would be difficult. I think that it would certainly lead to accession at the end of the process, but it would take time. But we're speaking in a hypothetical sense, obviously, and it's very much up to the people of Scotland to what they choose to do between now and when that question might arise.
So we've seen Lucinda Crichton there. She did say Scotland would have to apply for membership. Do you agree with what she's saying there? Well, I agree with her email when she says she doesn't see any situation that Scotland would leave the European Union. And I think that's the point that she also makes, that Scotland's position is quite unique. And indeed, Professor David Schaefer, only in a lecture last week, confirmed that he thinks that position is such that our uniqueness means that the position of Scotland would have to be developed in terms of our period, as
would the rest of the UK in terms of the terms and conditions that would be required as two independent members of the European Union. But also the Irish Minister, in her email, Lucinda Crichton, has also said that she recognises the period of the yes vote in 2014 and then the period where these terms and conditions in relation to our membership, in terms of how many seats we would have, some of the technical details, would take until 2016. But we've been a member for 40 years across a whole range of areas. We already comply with the acquis communautaire in terms of the European Charter, so we are in a quite distinct position. But of course the difference is our vision is for cooperation with our European partners, major trading partners. Only this week we've seen great export figures for Scotland. We want that to continue, and it's the Union under David Cameron that is putting that at risk.
But the trouble is she's saying that Scotland would have to apply. Nicola Sturgeon is saying that's not the case, but Nicola Sturgeon is saying there's no difference of opinion between Ireland and Scotland. So it's hard to square that circle, isn't it?
Well, quite clearly there's the period between a yes vote in 2014 and independence in 2016, when in terms of the position in relation to what our contribution would be, our membership in terms of numbers, etc., making sure that in terms of the compliance that we have that. I've got every confidence that we will be welcomed, as indeed Lucinda Crichton, the Irish Minister, has said, and indeed the many ministers that I meet do say that as well. But I think the biggest risk to Scotland and its future is relying on the Conservative government and the Union, and unfortunately that's where the Labour Party is, and really we have to give the people of Scotland the decision and the leadership.
In more general terms, how important is the European debate here in Scotland for the Yes campaign?
Well, the European debate is important in relation to the economy, the environment, etc., and also in terms of workers' rights. We're already seeing the Conservative government wanting to undermine using the welfare system, those in low-paid work and relying on benefits. If you then see an attack on the employment protection that David Cameron wants to see in terms of European policy, these are relevant. These are not just some abstract issues. These affect people day in, day out. And of course, with our environment so important, and in terms of energy, the future of energy policy, where Scotland has a great deal to contribute and will be welcomed in Europe, I think these are very important economic issues, not just political issues.
OK, Fiona Hyslop from the Scottish Government, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.